It began like any other evening, but one choice sparked a series of events that would lead to tragedy. A lively young woman in search of connection crossed paths with a man harboring secrets. Their meeting unfolded in a setting of betrayal and longing. Unaware, they ignited a storm of fury, sorrow, and violence that would devastate lives and leave a community questioning morality, justice, and the heavy toll of unrestrained emotions. 25-year-old Brianna Carter, who worked as a patient coordinator at a major hospital, decided to visit the Blue Martini, a high-end nightclub in Buckhead. Brianna had recently celebrated 18 months of sobriety after battling prescription drug addiction for 3 years. Her newfound stability included a one-bedroom apartment in Atlanta's trendy Midtown area. The Blue Martini, known for its strict dress code, catered to a wealthy clientele. Security footage from that night captured Brianna entering the club alone, dressed in a black dress, fitting the establishment's professional style. The club's dim lighting and sophisticated atmosphere set the stage for a meeting that would change everything. Marcus Price, a 50-year-old financial consultant at one of Atlanta's top investment firms, was there that evening. An Emory University Business School graduate, Marcus had built a prosperous career, managing wealth for affluent clients. He was without his wife of 23 years, Denise Price, a 51-year-old nurse who worked the night shift at a prominent trauma center. Marcus knew well that his wife's long 12-hour shifts kept her away from home late into the early morning hours. According to the club staff and patrons, Brianna and Marcus spent several hours together. Security cameras captured their interactions, which included sharing drinks, dancing to a mix of contemporary and classic songs, and engaging in what appeared to be intimate conversations in a corner booth. The club's bartender later testified that Marcus ordered multiple rounds of expensive cocktails and shots throughout the night. As the evening wore on, Brianna sent a text message that would later prove to be a key piece of evidence. She wrote to her friend Ashley Thompson, "Met an amazing guy named Marcus. He's in finance, going to his place." Thompson's reply, asking for caution and requesting the address, went unanswered, a detail that would later haunt both the investigation and Brianna's family. Marcus drove Brianna to his luxury townhouse in his Mercedes-Benz. Traffic and security cameras tracked their route through Atlanta's quiet streets until they arrived at his residential complex. Night doormen testified that neither appeared noticeably intoxicated as they entered the private elevator to Marcus's floor. Inside, they continued drinking, opening a pricey bottle of champagne found on the kitchen counter by investigators. The three-bedroom luxury apartment had high-end finishes and panoramic views of the city. The master bedroom, where the tragic end would unfold, was on the upper floor, featuring floor-to-ceiling windows and a private balcony. Neither Brianna nor Marcus could have predicted that, in less than 2 hours, Marcus's wife, Denise, would return from her shift to find them together. The stillness of the early morning was shattered when Denise, exhausted from her 12-hour shift, entered her townhouse around 5 a.m., expecting to find her husband asleep. Instead, she walked into a scene that would set off a violent series of events. As Denise climbed the stairs to the master bedroom, she heard unfamiliar sounds. Upon opening the door, she found Marcus in bed with Brianna. According to later police reports, Denise initially stood in stunned silence, but this brief pause quickly gave way to uncontrollable anger. Security footage from the hallway captured Denise's arrival and the confrontation that followed, changing multiple lives forever. The physical altercation began immediately. Despite her exhaustion, Denise launched herself at Brianna, who was trying to gather her clothes. Marcus, attempting to intervene, retreated from the room, a choice that would later receive significant criticism. His actions during this moment would become a key point of contention in the investigation and subsequent trial. Amid the struggle, Brianna managed to reach her phone and leave a voicemail for her mother. The recording, which would later become pivotal in the case, captured Brianna's terrified voice. "Mom, help me please, she's going to kill me." In the background, Denise could be heard shouting threats, and the sounds of a physical struggle were apparent throughout the 2-minute message. This voicemail would be played multiple times in court, visibly affecting several jurors. The situation rapidly escalated. Denise, who legally owned a 9mm handgun for personal protection, retrieved the weapon from her bedside drawer. Forensic reports later revealed that she first struck Brianna with the gun, causing significant facial injuries. Then, in what prosecutors later described as a deliberate action rather than blind rage, Denise fired a single shot at close range. The bullet struck Brianna in the chest, piercing her heart and causing immediate death. The medical examiner would later confirm that the shot was fired from less than 2 feet away. Brianna collapsed on the bedroom floor, her blood soaking into the beige carpet, a detail that crime scene photographers would document thoroughly, making it crucial evidence in the trial. Afterward, Denise's emotions became a complex mix of shock and remorse. Standing over Brianna's lifeless body, she used her medical knowledge to check for vital signs, finding none. At 5:17 a.m., she called 911. The recorded call, which was later analyzed, captured her detached, almost clinical tone as she stated, "I came home and found a woman in my bed with my husband. I shot her. She's not moving." Behavioral experts later noted the striking contrast between her professional demeanor and the brutal events that had just occurred. In the 7 minutes between the 911 call and the arrival of first responders, Marcus was seen pacing in the building's lobby, making multiple phone calls. He later claimed he was attempting to contact his attorney. Denise stayed in the bedroom with Brianna's body, making no effort to flee or hide evidence. Her behavior in these moments would later spark significant debate during the trial, with experts debating whether her actions showed remorse or shock. When the responding officers arrived, they found Denise seated on the edge of the bed, the gun on the nightstand. She immediately surrendered and began giving a statement filled with both justification and regret. The officers noted her professional demeanor, likely influenced by her years as a trauma nurse, but also documented signs of anger, including broken objects around the room, bloodstains on her scrubs, and marks on her hands indicating a physical struggle. The homicide unit arrived at 5:24 a.m., starting a complex investigation that would eventually divide the community. Detective James Wilson and his team found the crime scene just as the first responders had described it. Brianna's body lay face up on the bedroom floor, surrounded by evidence of a violent struggle. The preliminary medical report documented numerous defensive wounds on her arms and hands, along with severe facial injuries from being struck with the gun before the fatal shot. Investigators meticulously collected blood samples, fingerprints, and photographs of the scene, telling the story of Brianna's final moments. The 9mm handgun found on the nightstand, confirmed by ballistics as the murder weapon, showed Denise's fingerprints on both the grip and the trigger. Marcus was found in the lobby, visibly shaken but cooperative. His statement, later criticized by both the public and prosecutors, claimed, "I made a mistake bringing her home, but I never thought Denise would react like this. I tried to stop it, but things happened so fast." His apparent attempt to deflect responsibility would become a focal point of public outrage. At 6:45 a.m., Lillian Carter received a call from Detective Wilson at the police station. During the conversation, she discovered something that would alter the direction of the investigation. A voicemail from Brianna, which was recorded at 5:13 a.m. The 2-minute message captured Brianna's terror, including her pleas for help and Denise's threats. This crucial evidence became a key part of the prosecution's case, showing that Brianna had time to make a call, which contradicted claims that Denise's actions were a result of a spur-of-the-moment reaction. Detective Wilson's initial report highlighted several concerning elements of the case. The defensive wounds indicated a prolonged attack, not a swift shooting. The gun's location in the bedside drawer suggested that Denise had to deliberately retrieve it, pointing to premeditation. These details typically warranted more severe charges than voluntary manslaughter, yet that was the charge initially filed by the district attorney's office. The decision to charge Denise with voluntary manslaughter and her quick release on a $250,000 bond ignited immediate controversy. Criminal defense lawyer Robert Mitchell explained to Atlanta media, "In homicide cases, we usually see bonds of $1 million or no bond at all. This indicates either preferential treatment or a misunderstanding of the case's seriousness." Lillian Carter became a prominent voice for justice, organizing protests outside the courthouse and giving emotional interviews to local media. "My daughter called me for help while this woman was attacking her," she told reporters. "This wasn't a split-second decision. This was murder, plain and simple." Her advocacy attracted the attention of civil rights leaders and domestic violence organizations, all of whom demanded the charges be upgraded. The case quickly gained national attention, with major news networks covering the story. Social media exploded with hashtags calling for justice for Brianna, and online petitions urging for upgraded charges amassed thousands of signatures. Public focus intensified on Marcus Price's role in the tragedy, with many arguing he shared moral, if not legal, responsibility for Brianna's death. Medical professionals in Atlanta were divided on the case. Some defended Denise, citing the emotional toll of discovering her husband's infidelity, while others pointed out that her medical training should have helped her control her emotions. The hospital where she worked placed her on administrative leave, sparking debates over the presumption of innocence versus public safety. As pressure grew, the district attorney's office came under increased scrutiny. Legal experts emphasized that the voicemail, the retrieval of the weapon, and evidence of an extended assault all indicated premeditation, making the voluntary manslaughter charge inappropriate. Activists also questioned whether a defendant from a less privileged background would have been treated similarly, considering the racial and socioeconomic factors in play. In August 2016, the case reached a critical turning point when a grand jury reviewed the mounting evidence. After weeks of public pressure and a thorough review of forensic evidence, the grand jury decided to upgrade the charges against Denise Price to second-degree murder. This decision was largely influenced by the haunting voicemail left on Lillian Carter's phone, which revealed the prolonged nature of the attack. The upgraded charges prompted new scrutiny. Prosecutors presented evidence showing that Denise had to retrieve the gun from a locked drawer, requiring her to find the key, unlock it, and load the weapon. This series of events suggested a level of premeditation that contradicted the earlier claim that the crime was a heat-of-passion act. Additionally, forensic analysis showed that Brianna had been struck multiple times with the gun before the fatal shot, indicating a prolonged assault rather than a momentary loss of control. Marcus Price's involvement in the tragedy sparked intense public debate. While his actions, bringing an unsuspecting young woman into his marital home, created the conditions for the tragedy, prosecutors stated they could not charge him with a crime. Legal experts noted the distinction between moral and criminal responsibility, pointing out that although his behavior was reprehensible, Marcus did not directly participate in or encourage the violence. The district attorney's office faced criticism for how the case was initially handled, and internal reviews were conducted to understand why Denise had been given such lenient charges and bail. Investigations revealed troubling patterns in how domestic violence cases were managed, particularly when the accused came from privileged backgrounds. This scrutiny led to changes in departmental procedures for handling similar cases in the future. Community support for the Carter family grew steadily. Weekly vigils outside the courthouse attracted hundreds of people, and local domestic violence prevention organizations used Brianna's story to highlight the hidden dangers faced by innocent bystanders in domestic disputes. The case also sparked broader conversations about society's response to violence tied to infidelity. As the case progressed, national media coverage intensified. Major news networks aired special reports discussing the intersection of privilege, justice, and domestic violence. Legal analysts debated the case's implications for future prosecutions, while social commentators focused on the larger societal issues it revealed. The case became a key example in discussions about reforming the criminal justice system. Lillian Carter emerged as a leading advocate for justice reform. She forged connections with various advocacy groups and began speaking at events, emphasizing the importance of holding all parties accountable in domestic violence cases. Her relentless pursuit of justice for her daughter inspired other families in similar situations to step forward and demand more thorough investigations. The medical community also became involved in the debate, with professional organizations weighing in on the case's implications for their field. Statements were issued regarding the ethical responsibilities of healthcare professionals, pointing out that Denise's training as a trauma nurse should have influenced her response to the situation. This sparked wider conversations about professional ethics and personal behavior among medical practitioners. As the case moved toward trial, the prosecution built a strong case around physical evidence and the voicemail recording. They focused on proving that Denise had several opportunities to avoid violence, particularly during the time it took her to retrieve and load the weapon. The defense's portrayal of the incident as a crime of passion became increasingly difficult to maintain in light of the timeline showing the confrontation was extended. Throughout this period, Marcus Price remained largely silent, communicating only through his attorneys. His apparent lack of remorse and refusal to take responsibility for his role in the tragedy further fueled public outrage. While he could not be charged criminally, he faced significant social and professional consequences, including losing his job and being ostracized from his social circles. Denise Price's trial began on January 15, 2017, in Atlanta Superior Court, attracting national media attention and filling the courtroom to capacity. Each day, the prosecution, led by District Attorney Sarah Turner, opened with a powerful presentation of the evidence, including the crucial voicemail that captured Brianna's final moments. The recording, played in court, visibly affected several jurors as they heard Brianna's desperate pleas for mercy. Forensic evidence played a key role in the prosecution's case. The medical examiner detailed the extensive injuries Brianna sustained before the fatal gunshot, including defensive wounds on her arms and blunt force trauma to her face. Blood spatter analysis revealed that Brianna had been struck multiple times with the gun before being shot, which contradicted the defense's argument that the crime was a split-second decision. The prosecution carefully reconstructed the timeline of events. Security footage from the building showed Denise entering at 5:02 a.m., with the fatal shot occurring at 5:15 a.m. This 13-minute window was pivotal in demonstrating that this was not a crime of passion. Detective Wilson testified about finding the gun storage box in another room, emphasizing that Denise had deliberately retrieved the weapon. Denise's defense team, led by attorney Michael Bradford, argued that emotional trauma and temporary insanity were at play. They called a psychiatrist to testify about the psychological impact of discovering spousal infidelity. The defense contended that Denise's actions were the result of acute emotional disturbance triggered by finding her husband of 23 years in bed with a younger woman. The trial took a dramatic turn when Marcus Price took the stand for 2 days, revealing a pattern of infidelity throughout his marriage. Under cross-examination, he admitted to bringing other women to the townhouse, but only during his wife's work shifts. His detached and unapologetic demeanor weakened the defense's argument about the sanctity of his marriage with Denise. In their closing arguments, the prosecution emphasized 3 key points: the retrieval of the weapon from another room, the prolonged nature of the assault, and Denise's medical background, which they argued should have enabled her to control her actions. They highlighted that Denise, as a trauma nurse, routinely dealt with high-stress situations without losing control. The defense's closing statement framed Denise as a victim of betrayal, arguing that years of dedication as both a wife and healthcare worker had been shattered in a single moment. They pointed to her immediate surrender and 911 call as signs of remorse, asking the jury to consider the context of her actions. After 4 days of deliberation, the jury found Denise Price guilty of second-degree murder, concluding that while the crime wasn't premeditated, it wasn't a simple crime of passion either. The judge, noting the brutality of the crime and Denise's medical background, sentenced her to 25 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 20 years. During sentencing, Denise addressed the court, expressing remorse but also attempting to justify her actions. Her statement, which focused more on her husband's betrayal than Brianna's death, drew criticism from observers. The judge noted that this lack of full accountability influenced the severity of the sentence. The sentencing hearing included emotional victim impact statements from Brianna's family. Lillian Carter's testimony, reflecting on her daughter's recovery from addiction and her hopes for the future, moved many in the courtroom to tears. She spoke directly to Denise, saying, "You took not just a life, but a second chance at life." Marcus Price, who attended the entire trial without showing visible emotion, left the courthouse immediately after sentencing without speaking to reporters. His silence and apparent lack of remorse became a topic of public discussion, with many seeing him as morally, if not legally, culpable. After Denise Price's trial, Lillian Carter channeled her grief into meaningful action. In March 2017, she founded an organization in her daughter's memory, focusing on domestic violence, prevention, and victim advocacy. The foundation quickly gained support from community leaders and domestic violence experts who recognized its unique perspective on the issue. The first initiative involved creating educational programs for high schools and colleges across Georgia. These programs specifically addressed the often overlooked aspects of domestic violence, particularly situations where third parties become victims. Legal experts collaborated with the foundation to develop materials explaining the legal rights and protections available to individuals in potentially dangerous domestic situations. Local law enforcement agencies began incorporating lessons learned from Brianna's case into their training protocols. Officers received enhanced training on recognizing and responding to complex domestic situations, particularly those involving multiple parties. The Atlanta Police Department revised its procedures for handling domestic violence calls, implementing more thorough evidence collection protocols and victim support measures. The Foundation's work expanded beyond education and into policy advocacy. Lillian Carter worked with state legislators to propose new laws to address gaps in legal protection for third-party victims of domestic violence. The proposed Brianna's Law aimed to establish stronger penalties for crimes committed against individuals unknowingly drawn into domestic disputes and to create clearer guidelines for prosecuting such cases. Medical institutions across Georgia responded by implementing new professional ethics training programs. These programs specifically address the responsibilities of healthcare workers in managing personal crises and emphasize the importance of maintaining professional standards of behavior, regardless of personal circumstances. Denise's background as a medical professional raised important questions about the intersection of professional training and personal conduct. Community leaders in Atlanta embraced the Foundation's mission, implementing citywide initiatives to address relationship violence. Local businesses supported these efforts, providing funding for educational programs and victim support services. The city's response demonstrated a growing recognition that domestic violence impacts not only the direct participants, but entire communities. Through these initiatives, Brianna's story continued to influence public policy and social attitudes. The Foundation's work helped reshape society's view on domestic violence, emphasizing the importance of prevention and early intervention. The organization's success in bringing about concrete changes in law enforcement and public policy became a model for similar efforts across the country. The medical community's response to the case led to lasting changes in professional development programs. Healthcare institutions nationwide began incorporating more comprehensive ethics training, using Brianna's case as a powerful example of how personal crises can compromise professional judgment. Lillian Carter's transformation from grieving mother to influential advocate showed how personal tragedy can be channeled into positive change. While nothing could replace her daughter's loss, the Foundation's efforts ensured that Brianna's death continued to inspire meaningful reforms in how society addresses domestic violence and protects vulnerable individuals.